My name is Jon Leahy. I am a film director. My mum was an art director for TVCs and when I was a kid, and we spent a lot of time, both my brother and I, on film sets back when they actually built film sets, and for television commercials you didn't just go into a house. And we both spent time going to castings and stuff, and up until I was probably late teens, wanted to be an actor. I think I was 14 and I was cast in a role for an ABC Screen Australia, or whatever it was, I suppose it's Film Finance Corp back then, a co-pro called Dallas Doll, which bombed drastically and I don't think anyone ever saw it. The major my claim to fame, was I played Rose Byrne's first on-screen love interest, and I kissed her, which was quite fun. I like Rose. We've been randomly, I think the only reason I got that role is because I lived up the road from her and they were like, cool, we're going away for 6 weeks on shoots. These two kids know each other. Let's get that little dude. He can hang out with her, they're friends. And then I wanted to be an actor until that moment, until I walked onto that set, and then I realized that I didn't want to be an actor, I actually wanted to be a director. And I took a very, very roundabout way of getting there. I started in the art department, sort of following mum. From there, and I was 16 when I finished high school. I left high school and I was working on, it was Gillian Armstrong's feature, which, Oscar and Lucinda. And I scrubbed all of the burrs off the church that floats down the river at the end. The glass church, and that was like 3 months work, and I got a proper pay, and I was like, this is good, I can do this. And so then from there, that was 96, I think, and from that moment until about 2007, I worked in various crew roles. So sort of 11 years in and around art department, migrating to electrics, rigging electrics, and then I found myself as a grip, and I was a grip for like 8 years. I then decided to give it all away, and I moved to Victoria and went and studied at the BCA doing the film and TV course. I did a 3-year undergrad and then went back and did a year of honours. And that is how I came to directing. I had to leave Sydney to stop being a grip, I think. Rodrigo Vidal Dawson, who was our DP, is an old mate of mine. Rod randomly has produced a couple of music videos that I've made over the years, and I met him. He was the camera assistant on the first AC on a film clip I was making. Rod and I became mates, and we've had this really great relationship where we bounce back and forth, as you do with any contemporary. And he's ringing me, and I don't know why I wasn't returning his calls. But it was like 4 calls over 2 days, and I think we were just phone tagging each other. And then he finally got on. He said, "Look, dude, I've got this script I want you to read." And I was like, "Oh yeah, cool, just send it over." I had a read, and Rod was like, "So what do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, cool, go for it. It seems pretty cool. I think, tied it up a little bit. It's only an early draft. You're well done." He said, "Nah, for you." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, Monica Zanetti, who wrote the film, Mon and Rod had connected, I think somewhere as randomly as like LinkedIn. Rod had met up with Mon, and they chatted about it, and Mon wanted to do it. At that stage, Mon was just thinking like 5D weekend shoots for as long as it takes to get it all done. She was going to direct it, she'd written it, she was starring in it, and she was going to produce it. Pretty ambitious, and this is also Mon's first feature. She'd written shorts and plays before, but this was her first feature film. And Rod turned to Mon and was like, "Look, I think you got to make a choice, and it's either you direct the thing or you act in the thing, because you can do everything else, like the writing and the producing, but only one of those, because I think it's going to be a little bit too intense for you." And Mon was like, "Well, I think I'd rather be in it." And Rod then asked if she minded if he could show it around to a couple of mates. Rod sent it across to me. There was parts of the film that I really dug. It's not, it's an interesting one because it's not a story about me or anything. It's 2 female protagonists. There was really relatable material in there, and then Mon and I met up. Mon and we both dug a lot of the same source material. Where she was coming from in her writing was sort of where I went, like instinctually to look at stuff, and she'd go, "Oh yeah, I had," and it's like, all right, cool. So we know we sort of want to make the same film, and that really, it all turned out from there. Like it was just a yes, it just sort of snowballed. I wanted to make Skin Deep, Newtown as it was called in production. I wanted to make Skin Deep because of two reasons. One, it's a twin character study. Both of the characters are going through some really intense grief. One girl is facing her own mortality both girls are facing their own mortality. One in a really definite way, and the other girl, Leah, is a little bit more. It's her own sense of self that is forcing her to sort of deal with who and where she is at her life. But it's a story of that transport, or that moment between being a young adult and taking responsibility for yourself. And I really like the idea of people taking responsibility for their own actions, and I could see that in this. And it's a really cool, brutal story that has a lot of humor in it. There's some the one scene that really punched home to me was there's a final moment between Leah and her father, and it's just universal, man. Every single person in the world can relate to it. You don't have to be, a young girl living in Sydney. You don't, Caitlin, one of the stars, or one of the characters, is homosexual, but it's not pushing any agenda. It's just a really cool, really heartfelt story about youth and what that means, and how, if the opportunity of life is taken away from you, what do you do? From the first draft, I think Mon gave me draft 3. By this stage, Rosie Lord, was our producer, and she and Monica had been workshopping ideas, and we would, it was a dual protagonist story, and everyone was like, whose story is it? And I think my biggest thing, along with Rosie, the two of us sort of managed to find whose story it was, from where Mon had first put it onto the page to what ended up, what is now the final product. We worked out who was the protagonist and who wasn't, and it became almost like what Mon had written sort of shifted a little bit in the shooting and the editing to being about Leah, who is dealing with bigger issues than Caitlin is. Hers is massive, and Caitlin's is a little bit more micro. It's all very self-centered. And that would be what I think was the biggest thing that I brought. I was really lucky. I've got some great friends who are screenwriters that Monica really trusted. So we sort of got a little bit of workshopping with them, and just, they didn't do any rewriting, but they asked really great questions that then focused our attention in where the story should go. We had the most random pre-production. It was really short. It was almost too short. It was scarily short. It was only 3 or 4 weeks long. And of which I was on a family holiday in Bali for 10 days of that, which sounds a lot more glamorous than it was. Just I had this family holiday booked in over with everyone there. I had to go. It was horrible. So in pre-production, Rod was the person that I was spending most time with, and was constantly emailing and constantly on the phone too. And so Rod and I had a really great shorthand, and I knew Rod and I was really comfortable with him, and Rod and I have a really great relationship. I'm short, Rod's short, and we can be really vocal and not hold back what we think with each other. Not like we do it on set in front of everyone else, but there's a real fight in both of us for what we want. And that was an absolute joy. It was really fun. It was hard. We had very little money. We shot 10 days. 4 days were 100% night shoots, and I think the last couple of days before we broke were of the 6, we did some day nights as well. Rod didn't have a lighting package. It was all available light, under street lamps on the streets and stuff. He did a really good job with very, very little time or resource. It's all shot in Newtown in Sydney, which, if you know Sydney, it's classically the bohemian capital of Sydney. You've got your Fitzroy in Melbourne, or your Valley in Brisbane. That's it. It's Newtown. It's the streets of Newtown. It's the back streets, parks, laneways. King Street, which is a very busy thoroughfare. We had, the first day we shot, we did a 4 a.m. start to get sunrise in this quiet King Street, hoping that it was going to sort of be all deathly and there'd be no traffic on it, and that would reflect where the girls were at that part. And it was just a highway, man. There's just trucks flying up and down, and you're like, wow, this place does not shut down. A lot of Sydney really does close down. It's not an international city like that. It shuts, but King Street doesn't. It just keeps moving, even if it's just through traffic. So that was our home. King Street was the location. We shot on an Alexa. It was about 18 months ago, so I'm not 100% sure what the model or make was. But yeah, we shot Alexa with ultra prime super speeds so that we could see in the dark. And that was something that Rod and I both fought for. They wanted other cameras, and I was just like we had to push a lot of it in the grade just to get so you could see people anyway because it was so dark, and I'm really glad that we fought that battle and won. Like, you don't need a good or a big expensive camera to shoot on, but when you're blowing it up, you know, we've seen this on screens, really great screens, full size cinema screens, and it looks really cool and you can be really proud of it. I think if I'm not that technically minded anyway, so I was like, okay, this camera can see in the dark, that makes sense to me, let's shoot on that. It's relatively lightweight. Like Rod, the whole thing's 90% of the film's handheld, and so it didn't completely break Rod. It wore him down a lot, but you know, whether or not it'd be different if you were shooting on something much more compact. You know, I often find with smaller cameras, if you do go handheld, they're almost too light. You know, you can see the handheld a lot more, whereas this thing was solid enough to sort of float a little bit more than just jiggle around. Generally, I have a lot of love and respect for actors. I really dig what they do. Having said that, you know, I really like them to come prepared and it's a job, you know. Like, I enjoy watching them perform, I enjoy the craft, I enjoy helping people get to where they've got to get to. And I think you've got to be sort of specific with each person you're working with. Zara Zoe, who plays Leah in the film, you know, I was trying to get more rehearsal time, but we didn't have any money, so we couldn't book people out. I don't think we ever had an entire table read through. I think it was just, we'd find whoever was in a scene, get an hour and a half or something with them and play over like a day or two. But I tried to get the two girls together as much as possible. Mainly it was discussing, with this film specifically, it was discussing what was going on in the scene and why the words were being spoken. You know, not trying to overperform or rehearse the delivery or anything, but just trying to get to the core of what was going on. And I have a really wonderful friend, a woman named Nadia Townsend, who's a great dramaturg and has worked with me on short films. She's got this awesome trick where she taught me to sort of get your cast to speak back to you in third person what's happening in a screen, or in the scene, so that then it takes them out of it, but they become aware of the story of what's going on. It's like, okay, so this is what's going on. And you can see it click occasionally in an actor's head going, oh my God, it's not just about me talking, it's about what's happening, and it becomes broader. And that's really fun. We played around with stuff like that. On the day, I think a lot of it was just trusting them, and hopefully they trusted me in getting, you know, it wasn't often pitch perfect, but it was really good. And I mean, these girls brought something to the script that I'd never seen. Zara, in particular, brought this whole sort of this really beautiful wall up around her character, which makes complete sense. That, you know, she's not in the best of ways, and so she would have this wall around her that you know, isn't on the page and wasn't necessarily there a lot when you see it, but when you see her on the day. But once we got into the edit, it was just like, you genius! This is so cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know specifically with these two. It was more about just trying to find. It's a pretty naturalistic looking film, like it's borderline dogma. You know, we're really just trying to go through what's happening. What's going through. What's happening on the day, trying to keep it as natural as possible. It could be really heavily handed and be quite melodramatic, and it was all about just trying to pull that melodrama back to its core, and be as honest and open as possible. Give them the space to be vulnerable, to have fun. We had a very protracted post-production path. We finished shooting, you know, originally in about May 2013. Took nearly 6 months off. I went and worked on a short film up in northeast Arnhem Land, and then directed a theatre piece in Western Sydney. Rosie had gone and done other stuff, and while we were looking for an editor, I did a pass, sort of to script, and took that when we were sort of shopping that around to find ourselves an editor. We didn't have an editor when we went into production, which I mean I wouldn't do again, but that was the way it was. Finally, like it must have been in January this year, we came across a dude called Adrienne Powers, who is an absolute superstar. And Adrienne brought this sensibility to the film that none of us had. Like he's just pure story drive. He wasn't there, he had nothing to do with the shoot. So he wasn't, in no hang-ups, you know, that classic thing, you know, kill your babies. Adrienne was just there with a machete, man. Like he was happy to kill anything for the sake of the story, which worked massively in our favor. The way that we worked out, because again, it was trying to fit it around other people's schedules, Adrienne, Sound Firm Sydney did all of our major post-production stuff. Like they looked after the grade, the sound mix, all ADR and dialogue fixing up. So they had sort of relatively tough schedules or deadlines that we had to meet. And then, so Adrienne would then be like, okay, dude, you've got this much time to do this. They shifted a little bit, which was great because we ended up having more time. And I think Adrienne originally had like a 6-week edit period that grew a little bit. We probably ended up being about 9 weeks, 12 weeks. No, not quite 12, maybe 9 or 10 weeks. But so originally Adrienne would take it, sit down, I'd go in, we'd do notes. I'd nick off for maybe a day or two, come back, we'd go through another pass, and the next day the producer would come in and then the three of us would sit there. She'd have her notes and then we sort of worked like that. It would be either I would be there maybe, you know, sort of 50% of the time. The producer would be there sort of 20% of the time. So, and then obviously as it got closer to any deadlines, the more we'd all spend in the room together. But it was really, like the three of us became a really great little great team. I mean, if you liked something and you needed something, you'd fight for it. And then the other, you know, if you could convince the other two of your argument, it ended up going in the film. If you couldn't, and it was a 2 against 1 thing, it was purely democratic. And it worked really well. I mean, I can only think of one instance where Rosie and Adrienne wanted something and I didn't, and it took hours of convincing them, and they came round, and that was the biggest fight that we had. But it was all, you know, I say fight, it's like you're fighting for something that you love, so that was cool. One thing that did go sort of pear-shaped, we had a corrupt card a couple of times, and we didn't have the time to go back and reshoot. Or we had a corrupt card the first day, and we got to reshoot that on the last day, but then we had another corrupt, like a whole scene, well not a whole scene, but a couple of shots were missing that we just never got to go back and shoot. So there was that low budget sort of thing, like, it's just like, no, sorry, we didn't realise it on the day. You go to look at rushes, you know, a couple of days later and you've given back the camera and you're just like, but, I mean, no one will ever know that shot's not in there, and it's fine. Working on King Street could be quite challenging. Pretty quickly, Rod and I realised that the 50mm was our wide, because if we went any wider, you'd just be getting punters walking down the street clocking the length. So it was like, all right, so we'd tend to go a little bit further back and a little bit longer, and then that sort of dictated the look of the film, which again, I think it looks good, I think it works for the film, but it does make it all a little bit more observational, and you step back from the characters a touch. I mean, so that, you know, any challenge that was thrown at us sort of became a positive. It was never, I mean, I really enjoyed the experience. I think it came out, and I'm really proud of the film. I think if you spoke to like the first or the production manager, they'd have like much stronger arguments and better answers for this, because everything that I see is like, oh yeah, that was hard, but it ended up being positive. You know, we went back to reshoot. We did 2.5 days of pickups later, and that was a challenge because that was a tiny crew. That was like literally guerrilla style. Like we had a pretty small crew to begin with, but by this stage it was, you know, someone on camera. I think a couple of days we didn't even have sound. Myself, we didn't have a first, like, and there was, you know, the first, or who was running as first, was also sort of our runner and looking after any production design elements and sort of trying to pick up cast. It was just, so those, I mean, all those little things were nightmares, but you know, you forget about that. You just look at what you've got and you get happy. We did a crowdfunding campaign to get it off the ground in the very beginning, which was ridiculously small amount of money. We got like 11 grand. And I think that paid for the camera and lenses, but like we did double that. We all invested our own money, and you know, various members of our families or whatever put in coin. But I think for the initial 10 days, we spent about $25,000, and that's mainly, you know, the occasional lighting package, the camera. The big killer for that shooting the Alexa was the insurance on the thing. Like it was more than probably, that was the biggest, the camera and the insurance were the two biggest single expenses. You know, then any production design, wardrobe, feeding us, you know, petrol, getting trucks, stuff like that. But then we were, you know, back end, like post-production, the investments have been much bigger. We've been really lucky. Sound firm have come in. They sort of worked out this deal where they, you know, they invoiced us but haven't got any money. I mean, probably shouldn't be talking about this because legally I have no idea what I'm saying. So, but yeah, a lot more than that in the end, but not a lot of money overall. You know, I mean, you have dreams. You'd love to go wide release in, I mean, 6 cinemas would be wide enough for me. But I mean, I think what the plan is at this stage is we're in festival circuit world. We just had our first screening at the Austin Film Festival for this year, and we got an honourable mention, which was quite cool. There have been other festivals that have approached us post that, and I think the producers and distributors are sort of looking at whether or not they want to go that path or not, or if they're, you know, you're still holding out for a few of the majors. At this stage, everyone's still hoping for some sort of cinematic release in early to mid next year, April, May. I definitely think video on demand is a really great way to go. I mean, check out The Mule. These guys have just smashed it out of the park. Like, well done. Props to what they've done. And we're definitely, we're not genre, which I think is the hardest thing for us. We're a drama, and coming back from Austin and everyone saying drama's dead, which I think is a complete lie. Like in the last week, I went and saw Men, Women and Children and Whiplash, which are both dramas. Awesome, awesome film at a cinema. So hopefully, you know, there's an audience out there. It's pretty niche. I mean, if we can find it, that's why I think video on demand is not to be dismissed in the slightest. Like people who want to see it can see it. Yeah, I'm again not 100% sure. Screen Launch Australia are handling sales and distribution at this stage, and they want to go cinema. Whether or not it actually happens, you know, who knows. The best part of the entire experience has been sitting and watching a film that we made in a room full of strangers, and you know, hearing laughs and people sniffling in tears, and like it's getting the audience. Like watching it with an audience is the best thing in the entire world. Nothing has been as fun about this whole process. You know, like individually moments were really cool, but there was always the struggle. Whereas that, if you can getting people to see it is just the coolest thing ever. Hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? That I would like to have had a longer pre-production period and had all of the creative elements and people in the room, and really, you know, spent like not just a couple of hours, but like a day or a week really figuring out what each person thought the film was and what they were trying to make, so that then creatively any differences once we got onto set could have been worked. It's weird, we shot the whole thing in 12 and a half days. If I'd had more time, would it have been the film that we made? Ideally, there was a few moments where we were scheduled and it felt like luxury. Like, it's like, cool, we've got this, you know, we've got 5 hours to do this 2-minute scene. This is just awesome, because we couldn't get into a location or something. And then we'd have the complete opposite, where we did like 13 and a half pages in a day, which was ridiculous. But I actually think it works because there's an energy and a speed. It's like, you know, you guys can't not get this right, especially talking about the cast, so you're only going to get 1 or 2 takes at this, guys, because we got to move. You know, I think more time would have been a bonus, but it's that classic adage, you know, if you don't have time, you need money. Or, you know, what is it? Like, you've either got one or the other, time or money, or time and money, or nothing. I'm completely talking to myself, and I apologise for what I just said there. That doesn't make any sense. But more time, I think, would have been, more time on the shoot, more time in pre-production. To trust those around me was the best thing. And I would say that to any first-time feature, or any filmmaker, really. I think the best filmmakers do surround themselves with people that they trust. I was really lucky and had a lot of support, because I'd never made anything this long before. Like, and you know, I'd had a bunch of shorts that had varying degrees of success. But in a really odd way, I placed more trust in everyone in this than I have ever before. And the final film is closer to anything that I've ever imagined. Like, bringing and believing in people, I think they bring their A game. Like, if you don't micromanage and you trust, then people feel that and they tend to step up and deliver more than they would normally. If you do, and then it becomes a job. I would say that to survive in the Australian industry right now, or the film industry specifically in this country, you need to love what you do. And I think that's across the board. I think if you're a focus puller, or you're a wardrobe assistant, or you're a director, you need to love. You work hard. You know, 14, 16-hour days are not uncommon. And then if it's something long form, you know, you do that for a really long time. I mean, even if it's like we shot for 2 weeks, or, you know, 12 days, that's long enough to not see your family for that time. And you've got all of the pre-production time and all the post-production time. You need to love it. You just, I think it helps if you know how to manage your time and any fiscal elements in your life. Like, you know, if you do it for the love and you want to be there, then I reckon you can do it. To me, film school was massively important. I needed film school for the confidence that it gave me. I needed film school because it was a really clear place for me to, like, mark that line in the sand, saying I am no longer a technician working on a film, I am now a creative partner within this film community. Also, I think it gave me a vocabulary of how to speak film, and you learn the history of film. So you tend, I mean, I would hope, not to make mistakes that, you know, that you could make as a first-time filmmaker. The school I went to was really great. In the 3-year undergraduate course, you made 6 short films. So, and in the last year that you're there, in third year, you're pretty much just in production. You're working on everyone else's films. It's a weird sort of, you learn a lot, but it's a weird insular world that you're learning within. It's not necessarily translatable to the realities of filmmaking, but it does give you get some sense of how hard you have to work. And the other thing that film school taught me was you pretty much get out of a film what you put into a film. Like, if you put your heart and soul into it, then I think you've got a better chance of making something that other people will watch. If you're just coasting through it, and you saw that occasionally, and I'm guilty of it as well, you end up with something that nobody really cares about. And that school was great. Although, having said that, you know, I could probably list dozens of filmmakers that I love and admire who would never have been to film school or stepped foot in a building. So, horses for courses, really. For me, it was the perfect choice. The future for me hopefully involves making and creating stories. Be that feature, television, theatre. If I can spend my life telling stories that audiences watch, I will be very happy and feel completely fulfilled. At the moment, Rosie Lord, our producer, and I are working on a piece. It's very, very early in the stages. Again, another drama, sort of an international drama set between Australia and China, working around the Japanese-Chinese wars of the Second World War, beginning of the Second World War, and migration to Australia from China, sort of told through a protagonist who's living now, realising stuff about her past. I'm playing around with an idea about like a whole bunch of baby boomers moving into a nursing home and confronting their own mortality. That's a comedy, not a drama, which is a bit of a step for me. And then Zara and I, who plays Leah in Skin Deep, the two of us are working on a TV sort of, yeah, I mean, again, these are all just sort of, we're sketching out ideas. Yeah, that's pretty much where my future is in the immediate. Longer term, I'm hoping that it works telling stories. But you know, the nature of film is that it takes a while to make. So you know, if something's on trend, then it's 12 months old. It was created 12 months ago. That was the amazing thing about seeing Men, Women and Children. Go and see it, man, it's really cool. But Reitman's like that, like he's on point the whole way through, and it's like, this is so relevant now. There's a great article, I read a review, I think it was in the Sydney Morning Herald, I apologise if it wasn't, about that. Like, so films used to be watch set trends, now they sort of catch them, but this is on point. Like so, you know, paying attention to that I think is really important, but I think if you did things just to do that, to sort of set trends or try and work for trends, I don't know. I mean, that's not necessarily how I would do something. I like to do something that I like. Although, having said that, I'm relatively sentimental and like sort of populist culture. So I think my sensibility lies that way anyway. Top tips to making your first feature film in Australia from me would be try and find people who are, and that's a really important one, getting people who are as dedicated to it. Not someone who's going to say, oh yeah, look, I can give you Tuesday and Saturday, but I won't be available. It's like, look, treat it professionally and do it as properly as you can. I think if you also write something that is attainable, the best, and like the reason reading Skin Deep, I knew that we could do it, is basically a two-hander over a roughly 24-hour period in what is ostensibly the location of Newtown. Like, the girls go to different places, you know, we're inside, outside, we're in parks, we're on streets. But it's pretty linear, and there's no massive costume changes, there's no really big, there was not a lot of stunt work, there wasn't any, you know, major sort of dramatic fight scenes that we had to get past choreographing or anything. Like, all of those things slow you down. If you can tell a story as simply as possible, then you're gonna be leaps and bounds ahead of anyone else who's trying to make, you know, this epic sci-fi adventure. Not to say that don't do that, like, be as ambitious as you can, but the reality of the thing is that if you can make something in a short period of time, then you can get people on board. People will come and say, like, we were lucky enough to have, you know, fully professional crew who would lend us their trucks, you know, grip trucks, lighting trucks, for a day, or for even, like, we got a crane for a shot. It was like these really dear friends of mine came in, set it up of an afternoon, but it was like we were only ever going to get it for like 2.5, 3 hours. There was no way we could have pushed the friendship into anything like that, or else they'll never give you anything again. So I mean, if you can just like set yourself and work within those restrictions, then I think you can do whatever you want. And just do it. Like, seriously, do it. I've got mates who spent more money on short films than we did on this feature, and why not make something that's, you know, 75, 85 minutes long? You've probably got a better chance of getting it into festivals these days as well, because more people are making short films than they are features.